What if I told you the person standing next to you in family photos, the one who laughs with you, shares your secrets, and pretends to love you, is actually plotting to replace you? This isn't a movie. This isn't fiction. This is the story of how my own sister tried to destroy my marriage, how my husband uncovered everything, and how her perfect little act crumbled in front of everyone on what was supposed to be my happiest day. Before I dive into this twisted tale of betrayal, lies, and a wedding day you won't believe, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because stories like these, raw, shocking, and almost too dramatic to be real, are what we uncover here. Trust me, you don't want to miss how this one unfolds. I used to believe family meant unconditional love, that no matter how messy life got, your family stood with you. My younger sister and I weren't just siblings, we were inseparable. She borrowed my clothes, copied my makeup looks, and even joked that she wanted a husband just like mine one day. At the time, I thought it was harmless admiration. I never imagined she meant it literally. When I met Daniel, my now husband, he was charming, ambitious, and genuinely kind. My family adored him instantly, but my sister's reaction was different. Instead of the casual teasing she used to throw at my boyfriends, she became oddly quiet whenever he was around. I brushed it off, thinking maybe she was just shy or didn't know how to act around someone I was serious about. If only I had paid more attention back then. At first, the signs were subtle. She would sit a little too close to him on the couch, compliment him on things that weren't even worth complimenting. "Oh, Daniel, you're so good at fixing the Wi-Fi," or, "Wow, Daniel, no one drives like you." It was awkward, but I didn't want to sound paranoid. If I confronted her, she would just laugh it off and say, "Oh, come on, he's basically like my brother already." But the laughter felt forced. Her eyes lingered too long, her voice softened when she said his name, and there were moments when I caught her staring at him with a look I couldn't quite explain, a look that wasn't sisterly. Daniel noticed too. At first, he didn't want to upset me, so he stayed quiet. But eventually, he admitted, "I think your sister likes me, and not in the brother-in-law way." My heart sank. The idea felt ridiculous, but deep down, I knew he wasn't lying. Things escalated when the wedding date was finalized. The closer we got to the big day, the stranger my sister's behavior became. She insisted on being involved in every little detail. My dress, the flowers, the catering. She said it was because she wanted it to be perfect, but it felt like she was trying to control everything. The final straw? 1 week before the wedding, I overheard her in the kitchen, whispering to my mother, "Don't you think Daniel and I look better together?" I mean, sometimes I wonder if I should have met him first. I froze. My own mother didn't even correct her. She just sighed and said, "Stop talking nonsense." But the damage was done. I confronted my sister that night, and she didn't even deny it. She smirked, actually smirked, and said, "If he really loves you, then what are you so worried about?" When I told Daniel, he wasn't surprised. In fact, he revealed something I wasn't ready to hear. My sister had been messaging him secretly. She claimed it was about helping with the wedding, but her words crossed lines. Late-night texts about how lucky I was to have him and how some women don't deserve good men. Daniel never replied to her flirtations, but he kept the screenshots. He told me, "I don't think she's just being weird. I think she's planning something." That's when the fear set in. Could my own sister actually try to sabotage my wedding? The morning of the wedding arrived, and I woke up with a knot in my stomach. My makeup artist was late, my dress had a small tear that needed last-minute fixing, and my mother was unusually distant. It was as if the universe was trying to warn me that something was about to go terribly wrong. And then it happened. Just before the ceremony, when the guests were seated and Daniel was waiting at the altar, my sister walked out wearing a wedding dress, my wedding dress. The air in the hall froze. Guests gasped. My father shouted her name. And there she stood, smiling as if she had every right to be there, as if she were the bride. I could barely breathe. My hands shook, my vision blurred, and for a moment, I thought I was dreaming. But this was no dream. This was my nightmare. Before, I could even react. Daniel stepped forward. His face was calm, but his voice carried the weight of thunder. "This is exactly what I wanted everyone to see," he said. "This is who she really is." Gasps rippled through the room. My sister's smile faltered. Daniel pulled out his phone and began reading her messages aloud. Every manipulative text, every confession, every little scheme she had whispered into the shadows. It all came pouring out in front of our family, friends, and even the officiant. "She wanted to replace my bride," Daniel declared, his voice steady. "But the only woman I will ever love is standing right there, in white, waiting for me." The room erupted. My mother covered her face in shame. My father pulled my sister aside, and whispers filled the air like wildfire. My sister, once the golden child of the family, was exposed in front of everyone. For a moment, the wedding hall was wrapped in an eerie silence. The whispers had died down, the music had stopped, and all eyes were locked on my sister, standing there in a dress that wasn't hers to wear. My heart hammered against my chest as though it was trying to escape. I could see my father's face turn crimson with rage, my mother's lips trembling as if she couldn't decide whether to scream or to cry, and Daniel, my husband, standing like a shield between me and the chaos. I wanted to scream at her, to demand an explanation, to ask her why she would betray me like this. But when I opened my mouth, no words came out. It was as if my voice had been stolen by the sheer absurdity of the moment. How do you even begin to process that your own sister walked into your wedding as if she were the bride? My sister, however, didn't flinch. She stood tall, eyes glittering, with a strange mix of arrogance and desperation. She looked around the room as though she expected applause or maybe sympathy. "This should have been mine," she whispered, her voice sharp enough to slice through the silence. "I deserve him, not her." The audacity of her words made the crowd gasp again. Some guests shook their heads in disgust. Others pulled out their phones, recording the drama that no one would believe without evidence. I felt my knees weaken, but Daniel reached back and took my hand, grounding me. His grip was steady, a silent promise that no matter what she said, I was the one he chose. Daniel didn't waste another second. He held up his phone once again, and this time, he played an audio recording. My sister's voice filled the hall. Clear, undeniable. "Daniel, you don't have to marry her. She doesn't understand you the way I do. If you just give me a chance, I can make you happier than she ever could. Don't you see? We belong together." The sound of her words echoed against the walls, each sentence hammering the final nail into her coffin of lies. Gasps, murmurs, even a few angry shouts filled the hall. My father slammed his hand on the table, his voice trembling with fury. "Enough! This wedding is not about you." But Daniel wasn't done. He turned to the crowd and said, "This woman, this so-called sister, has been trying to destroy us for months. But today, I want the world to know the truth. My heart belongs to only one person, and she is standing right here beside me." He pulled me forward, and in that moment, I felt a rush of relief, validation, and rage all at once. My sister's face twisted, her facade crumbling under the weight of exposure. My mother rushed forward, grabbing my sister's arm. "What have you done?" she hissed. Her voice was filled with shame, but also something darker: fear. My sister had dragged, not just herself, but our entire family into humiliation. "I just wanted what's mine," my sister shrieked, tears streaking her makeup. "You all know I'm better than her. He should have been mine." The hall erupted. Guests murmured. Some stood to leave, others stayed, eyes wide, hungry for the scandal unfolding before them. My father ordered the groomsmen to escort her out, but she resisted, screaming Daniel's name as though saying it enough times would change reality. Finally, she was dragged from the hall, her sobs fading into the distance. But the damage was done. My perfect wedding was shattered, or at least that's how it seemed. When the doors slammed shut behind her, the officiant looked at us nervously. Do we continue?" Daniel turned to me, eyes full of determination. "Yes, we continue, because nothing and no one can take this moment away from us." The applause that followed was hesitant at first, then louder until the hall echoed with support. For the first time that day, I felt like the crowd was on our side. They had witnessed the betrayal, but they also saw the strength in us refusing to let it define us. And so, with trembling hands but a heart burning with defiance, I said my vows. I promised to love Daniel through storms and sunshine, through betrayal and healing. When he said his vows, he didn't just promise me forever. He promised me protection, loyalty, and unwavering love. By the time we kissed, the hall was alive. Again. Not with perfection, but with resilience. But of course, the story didn't end at I do. If anything, that's when the real chaos began. My sister didn't disappear quietly. She became the center of town gossip, her name whispered with pity and disgust. Friends stopped answering her calls, relatives distanced themselves, and even her closest allies couldn't defend what she had done. My parents were torn apart. My father couldn't forgive her, not for humiliating us on such a public stage. My mother, however, tried to shield her, insisting she was confused or just jealous. But deep down, even she couldn't deny the truth. As for me, I should have felt victorious. She was exposed, I had won, and Daniel was mine. But victory didn't feel sweet. It felt heavy, like carrying a crown made of thorns. The unexpected twist weeks after the wedding, when the dust had just begun to settle. Daniel received another message from an unknown number. It was my sister. "Don't think this is over," the text read. "You chose wrong. One day you'll regret it." When he showed it to me, I felt the blood drain from my face. My sister wasn't finished. She wasn't sorry. She was planning something more. And that, dear listener, was the moment I realized the wedding wasn't the climax. It was only the beginning of a longer war I never asked for. The morning of the wedding was suffocating. I woke up to the weight of dread pressing down on my chest, heavier than any nightmare I had ever endured. My heart pounded in my ears like war drums as the realization sank in. Today was the day everything would unravel. The air felt charged, like the calm before a storm that promised destruction. I had played this moment over and over in my mind. For days, every detail, every possible outcome, but nothing could fully prepare me for the reality. I slipped into a simple dress, not glamorous, not festive, just plain and dark, like the grief blooming inside me. Weddings were supposed to be joyous, loud with laughter and sweet promises. But for me, this was going to be a funeral. A funeral for trust, for loyalty, for the life I thought I had. My hands trembled as I adjusted my hair in the mirror. I didn't look like a guest attending a wedding. I looked like a woman marching to war. The wedding venue was already buzzing when I arrived. Strings of lights twinkled against the pale afternoon sky, and the sound of clinking glasses and cheerful chatter filled the air. My stomach turned at the sight of the floral archway, bright with fresh roses and jasmine, mocking me with their fragile beauty. How ironic. Love was supposed to be celebrated under those flowers, yet I knew betrayal lurked beneath every petal. Family members and friends greeted me with smiles, none of them aware of the storm I carried within me. I forced myself to return. Their smiles, my lips stretching painfully, my jaw aching from the effort of pretending. Every laugh, every cheer around me felt like a knife twisting in my chest. If only they knew what was about to happen. I kept scanning the crowd, searching for him, my fiancé, the man I once believed was my future. And then I saw him, dressed in his crisp suit, looking every bit the perfect groom. The sight of him should have made my knees weak with love, but instead it made my hands curl into fists. Rage simmered in my veins, hot and poisonous. I almost marched up to him right then and there, ready to scream the truth for everyone to hear. But no, not yet. Timing was everything. I had to let this betrayal bleed out in the most devastating way possible. Then came the bride. Everyone turned as the music swelled and she walked in. My breath caught in my throat as I saw her. My sister. My own flesh and blood draped in white, satin and lace, gliding down the aisle like an angel. My heart felt like it had been ripped clean from my chest. Betrayal didn't just have a face, it had her face. The whispers began almost immediately. Guests glanced at me, then at her, confusion flickering in their eyes. Why? Because the resemblance was undeniable. The same eyes, the same features. How could no one have seen this before? My sister, my fiancé. My life reduced to ashes in a single, excruciating moment. I couldn't move. My legs were rooted to the ground, my vision blurring with tears. I refused to shed. Not here, not yet. My nails dug into my palms, sharp enough to draw blood, the sting anchoring me to my resolve. The ceremony began. The officiant spoke of love, trust, commitment, all the words that once meant everything to me, now hollow and cruel. Each vow, each declaration, felt like acid poured into an open wound. When he looked at her with those soft, adoring eyes, the same eyes that once looked at me, I almost broke. But I didn't. I waited. And then, the moment came. Speak now or forever hold your peace. My heart thundered as silence blanketed the room. A charged pause, pregnant with expectation. Nobody ever interrupted weddings. That phrase was ceremonial, almost a joke. But I wasn't laughing. I stood. My chair scraped loudly against the floor, the sound slicing through the silence like a blade. Every head turned. Gasps rippled through the crowd as they realized it was me. My sister froze, her smile faltering, her grip tightening on his hand. He went pale, his confident mask cracking as he looked at me. I have something to say, I began, my voice trembling at first, but growing steadier with every word. This wedding cannot go on. The officiant looked bewildered. Guests leaned in, whispers swelling. My parents' faces drained of color. My sister tried to laugh, shaking her head, but I cut her off. You see that man standing there? That's supposed to be my fiancé. The man I was going to marry, the man who promised me forever. But instead, he chose to betray me. With her. I pointed straight at my sister, my hand trembling but unyielding. The room erupted. Gasps, cries, shouts of disbelief. My sister's face crumbled, her facade of innocence shattering as the weight of my words fell on her like a hammer. My fiancé stammered, his lips moving but no sound escaping. His mask of charm was gone, replaced by raw panic. Did you think? I wouldn't find out, I continued, my voice rising. Did you think you could humiliate me, destroy me, and walk away hand in hand like nothing ever happened? You thought wrong. Today, in front of everyone you lied to, everyone you manipulated, your perfect little act is over. The crowd turned into chaos. Some guests shouted at them, others tried to hush me, and some simply sat frozen, stunned by the spectacle. My parents were sobbing, caught between their daughters, unable to process the enormity of the betrayal. Walked closer, my heels echoing in the silence that fell between bursts of noise. Standing just a few feet from them, I locked eyes with my sister. You were supposed to be my blood, my family, but you were nothing more than a snake, and you... I turned to him, venom dripping from my voice. You're not a man. You're a coward who hides his betrayal behind a smile. By now, the wedding was ruined. The officiant had stepped back, unsure what to do. The guests were divided, some glaring at them with disgust, others whispering in shock. And me? For the first time in months, I felt free. My anger had finally found its voice. As I turned to leave, my sister called out, her voice desperate. Please, don't do this. Don't ruin everything. I stopped, turned back slowly, and said, No, you ruined everything the moment you put on that dress. And with that, I walked out. My head held high, my heart battered but unbroken. Behind me, the sound of chaos filled the air. Shouts, sobs, the collapse of everything they had tried to build on lies. The wedding was over before it had ever truly begun. The air outside the wedding hall was cold, even though it wasn't supposed to be. Maybe it was the adrenaline leaving my body. Maybe it was the way my soul had emptied itself inside those walls. As I walked down the stairs, people parted like water before me, their whispers chasing me but never touching me. I didn't care. I wasn't running. I wasn't hiding. For the first time in months, I felt weightless. But inside the hall, I knew the real storm had just begun. Later, I would hear how the guests turned on them the moment I left. How the whispers became accusations, how the stares became daggers. My sister, the glowing bride of the day, was left sobbing in her ruined dress, mascara streaking down her face, begging for understanding that no one could give her. The groom, my ex, stood frozen, pale as death, his lies crumbling around him faster than he could patch them. The families clashed. My parents, humiliated beyond words, demanded answers. His parents, furious at the public shame, hurled insults at my sister, calling her a homewrecker, a disgrace. The officiant packed up and left quietly, muttering something about never being paid enough to witness such drama. And then, as if fate itself wanted revenge, word spread. Videos, photos. Guests had recorded everything. The moment I stood up, the confrontation, the confession hanging in the silence of that cursed hall. By nightfall, the entire city seemed to know. Social media devoured it, spitting it out as memes, commentary, and disgust. They wanted a perfect fairy tale wedding. What they got was a public execution. In the days that followed, their lives unraveled faster than anyone expected. His company, the one where his charm had always smoothed his path, saw him as a liability. Who wanted to do business with a man who became a trending scandal overnight? Clients pulled out, deals fell through. By the end of the month, he was unemployed, drowning in debts from a wedding that never even finished. As for my sister, her shame was harder to erase. Friends she'd grown up with vanished. Family members refused to answer her calls. She couldn't step outside without feeling eyes burning holes into her. People didn't see her as a bride anymore. They saw her as the woman who betrayed her own blood. And nothing is heavier than that kind of shame. They tried to stay together at first, clinging to the ruins like desperate survivors of a shipwreck. But betrayal is a fragile foundation, and soon even they couldn't look at each other without remembering that their love was born from deceit. They fought, they blamed, and eventually they broke. When I heard they had split, I didn't smile, I didn't cheer. I simply sat in silence, letting the news settle inside me like the final stone placed on a grave. Their destruction wasn't my doing. It was the weight of their own choices crushing them. All I did was reveal the truth. As for me, healing wasn't instant. Betrayal doesn't just fade away like a bad dream. It lingers, it scars. There were nights I still woke up with tears on my face, mornings when the memory hit me fresh like a blade to the heart. But there was also freedom. I no longer carried their lies. I no longer played the fool in someone else's story. I rebuilt myself, slowly, painfully, but surely. And in the quiet of my own space, with no audience and no applause, I found peace. Sometimes people ask me if I regret it. If I regret standing up in that hall, tearing their perfect day apart. And every time my answer is the same: no. Because betrayal deserves no silence. Lies deserve no happy ending. And sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't screaming or fighting. It's simply telling the truth at the exact moment it hurts the most. And that's exactly what I did.